Welcome to the Trader, a Traitors podcast. My name's Matthew, and I'm a writer working in TV development, and I am a handy faithful. I've started using that phrase at the beginning of every episode, and I feel compelled to continue. Let me know how horrible it is. The Trader features deep dives into every episode of the multi-award-winning hit TV competition series The Traitors, as well as interviews with contestants from the shows, and this is season 3 of the podcast dedicated to The Traitors Australia. If you've just listened to the episode 9 rundown, then you'll know that Marielle, traitor extraordinaire, was beaten at her own game and became the third traitor to be banished. And, super excitingly, I interviewed Marielle for the podcast, which is exactly what you can hear right now. My extra special guest for this episode of The Trader is not only a Traitors contestant, but an actual traitor. It's Marielle Intveld. Marielle made it all the way to episode 9 of the show before being ambushed by 4 other players and voted out in an incredibly dramatic banish room. Marielle, how are you today?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm so excited to talk to you. Have you recovered from, I'm going to say, have you recovered from your banishment? It was probably like a year ago that happened.
No, I have not. I am still traumatized at the thought.
I'm sorry to sort of bring that up again. I haven't really told you anything in advance about what questions I'm going to ask, which makes me think you're either prepared to spill some tea or that you'll just be really good at responding in a very diplomatic way, which would make sense considering how well you played the Traitors. So we'll see how it goes. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to introduce you to our game, which we play on the podcast, which is the Trader Traitor. So our secret mission for the rest of the episode is to try to betray one another by telling an undetected lie. You can tell me something about the show, about yourself, or anything else that is a complete fabrication. For example, you could tell me that Teresa got drunk one night and smashed the camera. However, your lie can't be a fake opinion. It has to be a fake fact. So you can't give me an opinion like saying that you found Jack's death stare alluring and romantic when actually you were terrified of it. So we're looking for facts, fabrications. Does this make sense?
Got it. Yeah.
Awesome. So our game begins now.
Okay.
Firstly, maybe you could just tell us, Marielle, how did you find out about the Traitors? How did you come across this opportunity?
Yeah, sure. So I actually just saw the Traitors on Facebook. I saw an ad that they were casting for it. And I think a lot of people thought, because I've done acting and I have an acting agent, I think people thought it came through that, but it didn't. I just saw it on Facebook and put in an application, honestly, really quickly. Like it was quite... I didn't spend very long doing it, and it was kind of quite slapped together, and I just kind of thought if it's meant to be, it'll be. But yeah, just Facebook.
And now I've already asked Dirk about this, but I feel I have to ask everybody that I speak to from the Traitors Australia. Quite early on in the series, a big character who didn't last long was MK. How uncomfortable were MK's breakfast speeches, and as a traitor, were they actually like a gift for you?
Yeah, you're actually bang on. So it was like a topic of laughter in Traitors Tower because it was such a great diversion for us. Like MK just rambling on. People were so distracted by it and so consumed by is he or isn't he? And I think people knew that he wasn't. I think people just thought he was a little bit eccentric. That was like, we had no interest in getting rid of him because that was the perfect cover for everything. I was never annoyed by it because it was just helping so much. It was really a blessing in disguise, I think.
Yeah. And you said that people possibly didn't even think he was a traitor, but they wanted him gone for other reasons. Do you think that happens in the Traitors, that people sometimes aren't really voting for who they think is a traitor? They're voting sometimes for people that they just don't want to be there anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I said, I don't know, earlier in the season, I said in one of the banishments, I was pretending that I wanted someone gone. And I think I said, I don't even think you're a traitor. I just think you're getting in the way of helping us find the traitors.
Yeah.
And that was kind of people's attitude. Like people got really swayed by people they didn't like. And I think people, really big personalities clouded other people from their journey of finding the traitors. So yeah, I think big personalities got themselves into trouble pretty quickly.
Yeah. I get the impression that Matt was maybe a victim of that people just couldn't listen anymore, so just wanted him gone.
Yeah. Look, the Matt thing went on for so much longer than it was shown on TV. Like it happened so much earlier, and it was such an ongoing thing that I think people literally just lost their minds by the end. Like it was when he eventually left, it was like, I don't think anyone thought he was a traitor. I think people were just over it.
Now, did you want to be a traitor? And what was your initial reaction when Roger touches you on the shoulder, other than a spark of electricity because Roger's so handsome?
I know, really. I really wanted to be a traitor. I didn't have any clue. I think some people thought that we found out in advance that we were going to be traitors, but that's not the case. We found out in the room at the time. As it was shown, that's exactly how it happened. I really wanted to be. I think even just for the fact that I knew that I would sleep through the night if I was a traitor, that in itself was such an advantage. And I didn't realize quite how much I wanted it until Roger was going around, and all I could think was, oh my God, just please pick me. Yeah, it was very exciting.
Yeah, and that makes sense what you said about that you didn't know beforehand, because Dirk said the same thing. Dirk said that he thought that Roger touched him on the shoulder, and like he had to go and talk to production secretly after to ask them, like, is it me? And they were like, no, it's not you. I have to ask you this, and you're the perfect person to ask because you were a traitor. The sort of VT cut scenes of like the traitors walking through the hotel at night with their cloaks and their masks on. I think I know the answer to this, but is that actually you?
No, that is not me. So those were our lovely story APs that were doing that. I think having actual traitors walking around, they tried to minimize our movements, basically. So they wanted as little time as possible of us actually moving around, because if someone happened to come out of their room for whatever reason, that would have been disastrous. So no, not us. And I think you can tell by the eyes that it wasn't any of us.
Yeah, I was looking at the eyes thinking, I don't think that's any of the traitors. But did they film that then when you were there, or did they film that all in advance?
Yeah, they filmed when we were there. So we could hear them at night after we wrapped from our rooms. I could hear them pacing up and down the corridor. I didn't know what it was until later, but I think by the time I left, I figured that they would have had to have done that because we did no footage in our robes. So I assumed it would have had to have been someone else. Yeah.
Now, I've asked you about a big character, MK. I feel like I also have to ask you about Chloe. How was it to sort of deal with Chloe's assertions about messages from Spirit? Like, how seriously were the players taking her advice?
I think the fatal mistake that Chloe made was making really, really big predictions all the way through the game. There was she was making claims that I think so many people took as outlandish, that when she finally made that assertion, don't get me wrong, I was terrified when she said that. Like I don't know how people didn't know from looking at my face at that point that I was a traitor. But yeah, I think she had made some pretty massive statements leading up to that, to a point where people were sort of like, I'm not buying it. So yeah, it was lucky. We got lucky with that because it was intimidating.
Yeah. On the podcast, I've been working through each episode one by one, and there is a moment that I really wanted to ask you about. Well, a couple of moments. One is in episode 3, quite early on, and there's a scene where you're in the car with Justine, Fee, and Mark, and you accidentally mention that there are 4 traitors.
Oh, no.
And Justine turns to you and asks, how do you know there are 4? But the thing is, as viewers, there's a sort of very quick edit away from that, and we don't really see the fallout. So what was your response? How did you talk your way out of that?
So it's so funny that you say that. I was actually messaging Justine the other day and I sent her the GIF of that moment and I was like, this still haunts my nightmares. So the editing showed a longer pause than I think there probably was, although I also felt like I took 20 years to respond because it was my first major slip up. I got really lucky. Mark and Fee were in the front of the car and they were talking, so I don't think they heard it. And Justine, and I can say this because Justine and I have stayed really close, but she's just quite gullible. I pretty much responded pretty quickly. I was like, oh, well, everyone's been saying there's 4. So I've just got it in my head that there's 4. And she was like, okay. But a bit of background to that was that on the first day that we got there, Mark, Justine, Ethan and I made a little alliance. We called it the Core 4. The whole thing was that even if one of us became a traitor, this was before we knew, even if one of us became a traitor, we'd keep the others in for as long as we could. So when that happened, Justine said she thought there's no way Marielle would kill off a member of the Core 4. So I think that she clearly had a very high opinion of me because I was obviously not above doing that, clearly. But yeah, I think that kind of covered it a little bit because I kind of ran with the like, oh, well, I would never do that. Even if I was, I wouldn't have done that. So yeah. But I got lucky. I think if Mark had heard it, I would have been gone. I just got lucky.
Yeah, Mark the traitor hunter.
Terrifying.
Fairly soon after that, then, Angus was banished, which you sort of had a hand in. And then you moved right on to Claire the following episodes. So you seemed pretty confident about your gameplay and how you were going to work things. But how nervous were you? How worried were you that this could go completely wrong?
Honestly, at that point, not that nervous. I think I had, after Angus went, because Angus got banished and I had voted for him twice. So I think people looked at that and I had people say to me, I know now that you're not a traitor, because I don't think anyone would have expected traitors to turn on each other so early.
Yeah.
So Angus was sort of, Nigel and I had discussed it just because we got a chance to talk when Claire wasn't there. It wasn't in an attempt to keep Claire out of it. It was because we just got a chance to chat. And we had said, Angus is under the bus. Like, we have to go with the crowd because it's going to be really obvious. So we kind of ran with that. And then after that, Nigel was like, hey, I think we should keep going and I think we should take out Claire. I think the strategy was just purely as soon as a traitor becomes a weak link, they have to be cut off.
Yeah.
Because it's a selfish game. But no, at that point I was not worried about it at all.
Yeah. I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but me being very, very naive, I watched the UK Traitors first. So I watched that before the Australian one. And the first time, have you seen the UK Traitors?
I've seen bits of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's the first time in that series where a traitor votes out another traitor, I was so shocked. I couldn't believe it. But I don't know why it hadn't occurred to me before that point that was kind of inevitable. Like, in retrospect, it seems really obvious to me. Like, oh yeah, of course you're probably going to have to do that at some point. Mm-hmm. So was that obvious to you very early on that you were going to have to do that at some point?
Look, I think in an ideal world, 4 traitors could win. Like, by the rules of the game, 4 traitors could win. But I think I knew that there was no way. Like, it almost has to be a part of your game plan that you turn on each other. And I think it got to a point, and maybe it didn't make it clear watching it, but I think it got to a point where you're standing in a group and every single other person in that group is voting for a traitor that you know is a traitor. To turn around and then not vote for them is like, we would have been gone instantly, because it was so early on that it kind of got out of control that I think people would have looked at that and we would have just been eliminated all in a row, because at that point everyone was going with the crowd. There was no, for it to happen so early on wasn't the plan. Obviously, would have been great to keep everyone in for longer, but So unpredictable. Just so unpredictable.
There is another quite specific moment I wanted to ask about, and it was in episode 6, and it was the gamble, as it was called, where you had to choose 3 people to play this roulette game. And there's another kind of strange editing choice where, unless it's just the way I'm watching it, episode 5 ends with you being given this decision to make, that you've got to choose 3 people, and then episode 6 begins quite abruptly with you having chosen Nigel, Lewis, and Mark, and we sort of don't see that decision-making process. Do you know why do we not get to see that, or did it just take a really long time or something?
I think I don't think people realize we were in Traitors Tower each time we went there for about 2 hours. So the editing, the 2 or 3 minutes that they gave it was really brief. Every time we had to pick people, we would go through every single person. But yeah, so we got basically no information about what that gamble was. So we got, like you saw, we got the, pick 3 players to play the ultimate gamble. And our decision-making process was essentially Nigel, because we wanted a traitor in the room, because we needed someone everywhere at all times. Mark, because he was a strong player. We figured that if it was something to win money, Mark would be a good person to have. And then Lewis, because Lewis loves the pokies and talked about that the entire time. So as soon as it was a gamble, Lewis was the obvious choice.
Okay. I have a few questions from podcast listeners. The first question is from Joe. Joe asks, did you and Nigel have any idea how cutthroat Alex was going to be? And then he kind of asks the second question, and he asks, if it hadn't been Alex, who would your second choice have been?
Yeah. Look, Nigel and I did not want to recruit anyone. We were violently angry that we had to. I think we both felt that we had gotten this far. We were holding on really well. We were very disgruntled about having to pick someone. Definitely had no idea how cutthroat Alex was going to be. She'd played a very quiet game until that point. So I think we were very much under the impression that, I don't know, I wouldn't say that we picked her to eliminate her. Like, we both would have taken her to the end with us at that point. But it kind of felt there was so little people to choose from at that point that it was really just a matter of who's not going to do too much, who's kind of going to let us control the game the way we have been. If it wasn't Alex, it would have been Kate. For a different reason.
Yes. Robbie from Instagram has a couple of questions. Robbie asks, yours was the only season, I think he means from the English-speaking seasons, yours was the only season to have 4 traitors. The UK and the US ones had 3. Do you think this had any impact on things for you, positive or negative?
Look, I think positive, if anything. You start the game with better odds, with more people in your corner that aren't going to banish you. Beyond that, I don't know that it would have made a huge difference, other than safety in numbers. There's also not safety in numbers. It gives more room for a traitor to do what Nigel and I did.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think a huge difference, to be honest.
And Robbie also asks, he says, you were on various people's traitors lists at different times. Although when I spoke to Dirk yesterday, he said he never suspected you. So Robbie says, you survived so long. What do you believe was the biggest part of your success in fooling people or changing people's minds about you? How did you last so long without being banished?
Look, that's a hard question. It's a hard and a good question. I think I was so careful to. I calculated everything I said before I said it, but I was so careful to never be the source of a rumor. That was probably the number one thing. So and I'm happy to speak to that, but what was my downfall in the end actually didn't play out the way it came out on screen. It was different. But yeah, I never started a rumor. If I ever said anything, it would be like, oh, I heard this person say it, because there was always someone to go back to and fact check. And if they turned out to be wrong, then I had just heard it along the way. So I think a lot of it was speaking less. The more you talk, the more chance there is that you lie and make a mistake. So honestly, being as quiet as I could be, I wouldn't say that I've won people over. I really don't think that was the case. Don't think I was particularly liked. But yeah, I honestly just think I didn't give people a reason. And Kate ended up saying that to me later on. She was like, you were on my radar, but I didn't have anything. I just had no evidence. So yeah, just being very cautious.
Yeah. I feel like Nigel did a similar thing. I think he tried to only speak about things that other people had.
Yeah. Nigel and I just went with the crowd. There was never when you watch back, we never start talking about anyone. We never start a room. We never push people in a direction. You'll see us a lot, both of us do the sort of, yeah, actually, I don't know. Oh, you think Lewis is acting weird? Yeah, that's true. Actually, he does seem a bit off. Like it was just that running with whatever anyone gave us.
Yeah. And now you mentioned your downfall. So I have to ask a few questions now about how it all came to an end. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you regret your story about Fee naming Teresa as a traitor?
See, this is what I mean. So the night that all happened, Fee and I sat down and they got it on camera and they got Fee telling me, and she was so upset because her and Teresa were close. She was like, I think Teresa's a traitor. I think she's a traitor and I don't know what to do about it.
So she did say that?
So she did say it. She absolutely said it. We had a whole conversation about it. And I then went to Kate and that group and I said, hey, Fee's just told me that she thinks Teresa's a traitor. What does everyone think? Then that night when we went up to Traitors Tower and we were tossing around names, I was like, we can't banish Fee because I've just started a story. And then they ended up deciding on it. And I knew as soon as Fee left, I knew that morning that I was gone because she wasn't there to back up my story. Yeah. That is the one thing that I was the most disappointed about with the show, because I get messages a lot being like, oh, so good until that last slip up. And I'm like, it wasn't a slip up. It just didn't. Yeah. And fair play to them for taking me down. It was a total blindside. They got me good. But yeah, that conversation did happen and I wish it had played out differently.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And well, that leads on to the next question, which is probably has a very obvious answer, because I was going to ask how blindsided were you at that banishment table? And Alex, I'm guessing, must have been a particular shock because, you just recruited her. Can you just talk us through that experience of those votes coming in with your names?
Yeah, completely blindsided. I had no idea. And then it was funny because when the first person, I think it wasn't Lewis, it was whoever was next to Lewis, I can't remember. They turned their thing and I saw my name and I was like, I was like, they're going to vote me off. I knew as soon as I saw the first one that a blindside was coming. I
think it was Craig was the first person to write your name down.
Yeah. Alex was a real blow. I think, and again, Alex and I still are in contact. We catch up a lot. I think she was genuinely upset about having to vote me off. I think she's an incredible actor, but I think her face, I read it as how upset she was. And she told me after, it was exactly what I had done with Angus and Claire. You do what you got to do to survive. And she made absolutely the right call. But I think when I looked at her, that was the most brutal, you bitch. I've just brought you into this position and you were taking me down. But yeah, I think it was almost, as the votes went around the table, it was almost the point of relief that I wouldn't have to try and fight another day. I think if we'd gone through it and I'd only just survived, to know that I had to try and convince people of a near impossible thing would have just beat me down. So when it got to the point, I was like, okay, thank God I'm just going in one. Just one big blindside. And the producer said to me after this, it's the best way to go. It shows that they couldn't take you down if you knew. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Something that I noticed when I'm watching The Banishment Room, and particularly in this episode with you, are you allowed to speak after the votes start coming in? Because watching it, I feel like as a viewer, I would like want to keep defending myself when people turn your name over and be like, "What? No, like what? Are you kidding? Why have you put my name?" But like, we get the impression as viewers that it's very quiet and you just
Yeah,
accept what's happening. I mean, is there a rule about that, or is that just
yeah,
because you feel
there
like
is.
it's pointless?
Yeah, no. So once the votes are read, that's it. So the person voting can say, one or two things about why they voted for that person, but no, that's your time to defend yourself is over. And Roger says, that's enough.
Yeah.
That's all.
I mean, I guess that would ruin the flow of
Yeah,
events if people start.
yeah. It gets so heated in there that they'd never be able to rein it in. It would
Yeah,
just go
yeah.
forever.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now we're almost at the end. We've been playing a game. We're still playing a game. We haven't finished yet. Before we conclude our game of betrayal, Marielle, maybe you could tell us a bit about where we can find you online, or if there's anything that we should check out.
Yeah, sure. So I'm most active on Instagram, which is just my name, so Marielle Intveld. If the spelling is hard, I'm sure it'll be in the comments on this,
Yes,
but it's
yes.
just my full name. That's where you can find everything that's upcoming. There's talks about a few little reality TV bits and pieces coming up, which are exciting. But yeah, that's the best place to find me.
Yeah, great. And you've just reminded me of something else I need to ask. What are your thoughts on the next series of the Traitors Australia having sort of like some sort of celebrity contestants, like reality TV veterans and things? How do you think that's going to play out?
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually I met my partner on this season of The Traitors. He was supposed to be a contestant and ended up working in production instead.
Okay.
And we didn't start talking until 6 or 7 months after the show finished. There was nothing like that. But he and I were talking about it the other day and about the celebrity aspect of it. And I think the general feeling across the board is it's a little bit disappointing, I think. I think the beauty of the show is getting everyday people who are, not famous and who are just there to give the show a good crack. I hope that there's been no, I don't know, sometimes with celebrities, they have this, they'll have like I have to appear for a certain number of episodes clause to go on the show. I hope none of that has happened. I just hope it doesn't compromise the integrity of the show. And I think they're at a disadvantage. I think contestants will want them gone sooner, personally.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how it plays out. I wish they'd kept just everyday Australians for a bit longer.
Yeah, I feel the same. And now we have been playing the Trader Traitor. We've been trying to lie to one another. I told you a lie at some point. Did you tell me a lie?
I did tell you a lie.
Okay. I have a few. I wrote down a few little notes as you were speaking, so I have some options. I'm going to guess yours first. I've got. Was it? I'm going to go for it. I think maybe it was something you just said in the past couple of minutes. Did you make up that you met your partner as part of the Traitors and then the?
No, I didn't. That is true.
Oh man. Okay. In that case, I've failed. I have failed in my mission. Marielle, what did you lie about?
You nearly got me. You were close. And again, this was my traitor strategy. Just always be a little off the truth. I did meet my partner on the show, but he was never meant to be a contestant.
Okay, I was on,
you were close. I panicked to get it in at the last minute because this chat went really quick and I was like, oh God, I haven't lied.
That was my theory. I wondered, maybe Marielle hadn't told anything yet. Do you have any idea what I lied to you about?
I have no idea. I feel like your questions have all been so straightforward. I'm going to go with I'm just going to assume it's a small lie. Did you lie about the name of one of the people that asked a question?
No, actually, I was very honest about that. So
Okay.
they are real people who asked questions. My lie was I really didn't think I was going to get away with this, actually. I made up a story about Dirk. I said that Dirk thought he'd been chosen as a traitor and
Oh,
then asked
smart.
production about it, and they had to assure him that he wasn't a traitor.
Honestly, you leaned into Dirk being just having big main character energy. So I would have just believed it.
That was my tactic. I'd mentioned him a couple of
Yeah.
times, and I thought if I keep talking about Dirk, it'll blend in quite well.
Yeah. No, perfect.
Marielle, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been such a treat to talk to an actual traitor. You're only the second traitor I've spoken to after Christian from the US series. It's generally been faithfuls that I've spoken to, so this has been really, really cool. So I know the listeners want to hear the perspective of a traitor themselves. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I will talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks for having me. So good to speak.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, Trader listeners. How fantastic was that? The first actual traitor interview of the podcast season, but not the last. Again, after episodes 10, 11, and 12, you'll be able to hear interviews with all of the remaining contestants from here on in. What a scoop for the podcast. I've already conducted some of these interviews, but not all. So if you're desperate to ask any questions for the remaining contestants, send me a message as soon as you can. You can get in touch with me on Instagram at the Trader Podcast, Twitter at the Trader Pod, or via email at thetraderpodcast@gmail.com. I'll be back with another returning co-host for episode 10. And by the way, I think I said that at the end of episode 8 by accident instead of saying episode 9. Look, I'm recording and interviewing and editing completely out of chronological order, so I'm just doing my best. Until next time, whatever episode that is, stay faithful.